Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the COASTER-net Dispatch. We've got another burning question here tonight, and that is, Jeff, will theme parks be able to maintain adequate attendance throughout this whole pandemic? That we see a whole bunch of parks opening up. Some parks have already opened up, and we see varying results. That Jeff, let's start with Universal. We've kind of talked about this on other shows, but what has been the general impression there?
Yeah, Universal is definitely like the first big guy to open up and start taking in lots of guests. And the initial report was that they were full, right?
Yeah,
But
day
this
one,
week,
day one, they were packed.
Yeah, they were packed. But this week, we found out that they are reducing staff. Now, they're doing this, I'm assuming, to cut costs. They're not reducing staff that the guests see. And this might be so that they can hire more people to clean and help maintain their health and safety standards. But they are reducing staff. And that's I think that's a red flag right there. I know that you said on a previous show that a friend went and they weren't happy with the amount of attractions that they could see in a single day.
Well, I've heard that. So he went early on when it was still very busy. And his opinion was, or his experience was that he only got to ride like 3 or 4 things the whole day. Now I don't know how long he stayed. I'm assuming he stayed the whole day. He says the reservation system was nice, but it was packed. Now other people have messaged me and said that the place when they went was a ghost town, and they got to ride just about everything they wanted to. I don't know. I didn't get into specifics about re-rides and how many times, most normal people don't count those things except for Danny Miller. But and maybe you, right?
I do, yeah.
So it seems like the general consensus is in Florida so far, and we've seen multiple roller coaster news outlets post this, that they like to flood day one. We've seen it happen with Universal. We've seen it happen with City Walk. We've seen it happen with Disney Springs now. They like to flood day one, but then it kind of trickles off afterwards. That you don't have those vloggers coming in with their selfie sticks, taking pictures for the YouTube, of which we are currently on. That you don't have those people flooding every day. And so your Universal is basically relying on locals, pass holders to sustain this, and it doesn't seem like Universal is going to be able to sustain it. So the question then becomes, will Disney even open? Because we have dates, right? What are the dates supposed to be?
We have some dates. So basically, Disney World in Florida is going to have a phased reopening starting on July 11th for the Magic Kingdom and the Animal Kingdom, and then July 15th for Epcot and Hollywood Studios. And from what I understand, day one, the reservation system, it's already full.
Well, that should come as no surprise to anyone.
But without like international travelers, without a lot of domestic travel, without New Yorkers that, obviously are flooding their midways all the time. We're not allowed to go to Florida. What will it look like in a week or so? That's really the question.
I did hear that the reservation system crashed when it first opened, but then you were able to secure reservations for other days once again later on, when all the firsters decided to not be there anymore. Then you could go and get reservations for any other day. So I guess the question is what will every other day look like? And I think the bigger question is with COVID cases spiking in Florida and California right now, are they even going to be able to open on these days? Like we've seen issues with workers now, right?
Right. So in California, they announced that they were opening and they pulled that back. So they had their cast members started a petition basically for the health and safety of the guests, but also the health and safety of the cast members. They weren't really convinced that what was being proposed was adequate, and Disney has agreed with them and delayed their opening. They've not set a new opening date for California just yet. They said that maybe after July 4th they would kind of revisit this, but they need a few. They said that they need at least a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, once they decide to be able to kind of like train and staff up. And I'd imagine that they're all kind of experiencing a little bit of brain drain. That they might be losing people during this.
Well, and that's the thing, is how many people can afford to not be working, and people might just start moving on to other professions and being like, hey, when Disney comes back, I'll just go back then, but I got to do something else right now. And like we said, there's no guarantee that once they open that they stay open either. Florida's cases are spiking, California's cases are spiking. Now you can say whatever you want about the Florida numbers. Will Disney decide on their own, what, this isn't worth our time or effort? Because if the same thing happens at Universal and people stop showing up because those people aren't traveling, then it may not be in Disney's best interest to actually keep people coming, because you run the risk of workers getting sick. You run the risk of an outbreak happening, and that's going to look bad on you for PR perspectives. Like, Disney likes to stay clean and above all this kind of stuff a lot of times. And I feel like if there was a company that was going to call it, early, it might be Disney. Now, granted, Disney stayed open probably a week longer than what they should have at the very beginning of this too. So
but they were also one of the more responsible ones. They did shut it down before the state. Well, I don't think the state ever told them to.
No,
but they did shut it down before other chains, kind of called it quits.
Yeah, they did. I personally think they left it open a little too long. Seeing the pictures of massive amounts of people watching fireworks didn't sit very well with me personally. But nonetheless, so Disney, this is happening. So I guess the question becomes then, if people aren't going to travel to Disney parks, and Disney's already kind of like found new ways of revenue, the whole NBA thing I think is ingenious to keep their hotels filled, to keep money flowing in. Them and the NBA are going to work out this whole deal with the teams playing at the wild world of sports. I think that's an amazing idea. And it keeps Disney in the mindset of the people. Maybe if you can't go there, we can still see what's going on. But then I think this is going to be a windfall for local parks. That if you're not going to go to Disney, and like you said, Jeff, you're not even allowed to go to Disney, right?
Not right now, at least, no.
No, if you go to Disney, you got to quarantine for 14 days or face stiff penalties, very stiff penalties.
I thought they were very stiff penalties, yeah.
Like you're talking about thousands of dollars in penalties. So I think that's going to show what's going to happen there. Is I think places like, for you, Six Flags Great Adventure, for places like Ohio, Cedar Point and Kings Island, for places here, Great America, if they ever open, I don't even know if they will. I think places like those are going to see a windfall. And I do think that those places might come closer to actually meeting what their new max capacity is. So I don't think on a normal given day it's gonna be sold out forever. I think you're gonna see certain days. I think weekends, especially Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think you're gonna see those maybe be harder to obtain reservations for. But I think once you start getting into the midweeks, Jeff, I'll be honest, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if we see sellouts at local parks like Worlds of Fun, Kings Island, Cedar Point. I would be shocked if we see those midweek.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope that that's the case too, because I know that there's lots of pass holders that are just dying to go no matter what, and it would be good value for them. It's kind of have to strike a balance to be able to make sense for the parks financially to keep that going. Now, I have noticed that a lot of regional parks are basically doing 8 to 9 hour days. So I'm reading that as one shift. So they've already kind of controlled their labor just, into, to consolidate everybody into that one single shift. So it's like,
well, and it's interesting too, that a lot of these parks already cut their hours, that Cedar Point, went back midweek, 1 hour less every night. You only get the late hours on like the Saturdays. But every other night they cut back an hour. So now we're seeing an even further cutback from that. So it's maybe not as drastic as people think it is, because Cedar Point's staying open to 8 most nights. So that's only a 2-hour shift that way. Tony Clark also said that early entry is off the table too. So that's another thing that he announced today. So
actually, there's a lot of changes at Cedar Point that I read about today. No fast lane unless you already have made the reservation.
Yeah.
So people who bought that season long one, they got a tremendous value because they're going to be able to use that this year, next year, and this year. They're the only ones using it.
Yeah.
No smoking. We got the answer to the smoking pens. No smoking in the parks.
And I'm all for that. I love this because walking by those smoking areas, I hate smoke whatsoever. I just hate it. It messes with my lungs every single time. Like, I can smell it. You could be 30 yards that way and I will smell that smoke immediately. I have a nose for it. And it's funny because I grew up in restaurants and places, and my grandmother owned a bar, and there was smoke everywhere. You could smoke until your hair set on fire back in the day. But ever since they got rid of it indoors, basically in all of Illinois, you can not smoke indoors. Like, I have become acutely sensitive to smoke, so I get very upset with people who smoke. That is one thing that will not be any sad. Hey, you can keep that forever, and we can have those nice shaded areas for people to relax in and not smoking. But I think that was mainly it. They talked about the rides. They talked about some of the rides not being open at Cedar Point, Snake River Falls, Forbidden Frontier, no water park. The Snoopy Bounce House will be closed. So we see already that there's going to be changes here. Yeah. But I still think that we're going to see attendance in these parks. Is it going to be? The question is it going to be financially beneficial for the parks? I don't know. I don't know if a lot of those people coming in are pass holders. Cedar Point's a different case because you're selling hotel rooms too on top of that. So it's an added revenue stream. But for Kings Island and Worlds of Fun and all these other places, I'm not so sure. And we also saw Busch Gardens and Kings Dominion basically saying that it's not financially feasible to open. Yeah, unless it comes very soon.
They're kind of in a different situation. I looked at that. I was talking with our friend Daniel Westfall about that a lot too. And I've been looking at the Virginia government website a little bit, poring over that because we were talking about favorite manufacturers. Pantheon was something that I was really interested in seeing. Yeah. But I think that they're kind of putting themselves in the wrong category. If you read like their phase reopenings, it basically says that like this third tier can constantly change and evolve, but it's the last one. And I think if what you looked at with Ohio, it might be a little bit of a signal of what to expect. And that is that entertainment and like these other businesses need to kind of like start up first before they start things that like drive tourism. And Busch Gardens Williamsburg drives out of state tourism. So like, I'm not surprised that they maybe put that limit on them that basically made it, financially irresponsible to open up.
Well, and it's hard to tell from what they're saying if it's a political move that they're trying to put pressure on the government to let them open, or if they're basically saying
officials trying to help them. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if they're saying, no, we're not opening. Like it seems like a political pressure, but I think there's going to come a point where we saw that pressure work in Ohio that the governor said, no, you can't open, lawsuit. Oh, now we're opening a month later.
That might have been his plan anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, he had that big press conference plan and something else came up, right?
Yeah.
And that was more pressing at the moment. So it got like kind of to be continued. So it all resolved in the same 24 hours, 48 hours anyway.
Yeah. And he can have plausible deniability and be like, hey, well, they were suing us, so I had to let them open. So he can kind of wash his hands of it a little bit. So we'll see what happens at Kings Dominion. So it's just such a difficult, changing situation. And I personally don't think we're through the woods here yet. I don't know if I would be comfortable going to a packed theme park, a limited theme park. I'm going to have to see what pictures look like, because Cedar Fair's not doing virtual queuing. They're having people line up in lines. I have to see what that looks like before I'm comfortable walking into that place.
I think that's going to look like a normal theme park with everybody wearing a mask.
And if that's the case, if everyone wears a mask, that might be okay. That might be okay if everyone wears a mask, because the science is clear on this. The science is clear. If everyone wears a mask, cases go down, and it fits the common sense. Fits the common sense test as well. So this isn't like, oh, well, I don't believe that science is that. Think about it. It fits the common sense test. If everyone's wearing masks, you can't spit on each other. So it's the main way that things are being transmitted. And it's disgusting to think about before, how we were spitting on each other all the time, but it's true, we were. So it's just the way it is. So if everyone wore a mask and you have social distancing, it's just so weird, because I've seen different applications of this. I haven't been happy with what I've seen out of Holiday World. I don't think I'm going to go there for Hollywood Nights, because they're not requiring masks. I am happy with other places. Six Flags, their policies look to be on paper pretty solid. They're going to be opening up pretty soon. We're going to see what happens there. So there's a lot of question marks out there. And also I've heard SeaWorld is a mess too. That SeaWorld, no masks anywhere. So you know what? I don't want to put myself in a situation that I believe is dangerous. If you don't think it's dangerous, that's great. I believe it's dangerous, and that's what matters. And two, I don't want to be arguing with people who are knowingly breaking the rules all the time.
You argue with people every place you go.
I do, but I try not to. I don't enter a place with the express purpose of who can I argue with. Arguments find me, Jeff. They find me. And they find me with line jumping. And if you are going to go to a park, and not wear a mask, you can never again complain about line jumpers, because you are knowingly ignoring and breaking a rule in the park. So you cannot pick and choose what rules you want to knowingly follow and what rules you knowingly want to break. You either follow them or you don't follow them. If you're knowingly going to break it, I don't want you to hear you bitching about line jumpers, voting them for the worst thing in Tournament of Terrible, because you, my friend, are worse than that, because you too are knowingly breaking rules. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking
Jeff, you made me find another argument.
I know, I did it on purpose. But I think that the major issue is with the guests, because the guests have to buy into these safety procedures for them to work, right?
Yeah, because Six Flags said the right thing. They said they're not dispatching trains unless every single person on the train has a mask. Now, granted, what happens after the train dispatches, but hey, I'll tell you what, Silver Dollar City, I remember Silver Dollar City, and I was on Outlaw Run, and some idiot pulled out a cell phone. Another rule that you guys like to complain about all the time, but you're going to say, oh, well, that's bad, but not wearing masks is okay. Another rule that you won't be able to bitch about anymore. The kid brought out a cell phone onto Outlaw Run, and by the time that train made it back to the station, there were 2 security guards waiting on the station for that train to pull in, and called the kid over and said, hey, we're taking your phone, and read him the riot act. If you want stuff enforced, look at your videos, have security there and waiting to take care of people that want to knowingly break the rules. That's what
and I think if the park sets the tone that it'll work up to a point, but there has to be like guest buy-in. I think that like when I see, again, Florida is a place where the numbers are going up, but Busch Gardens, Tampa, SeaWorld, Orlando, that is where I'm seeing pictures of people like with the mask around their chin or not at all, or, it's disappointing because, Busch Gardens, Tampa, I love Busch Gardens, Tampa. I can't wait to go to Busch Gardens, Tampa, but it doesn't make me feel good about it right now.
No. And honestly, I'm probably not going to go to a lot of these places. One, because I it would be silly. But two, I'm not going to knowingly put myself into situations where I'm there to have a good time. And if I'm constantly being angered by people who think that they're better than everyone else and they're selfish, and you can quote me on that, you're better and you're selfish, that's why you don't have to wear a mask, then hey, then I don't want to put myself in that environment anymore. So there you go. So, well, that wraps us up, Jeff. Thank you for getting me on. This isn't even the rant section. What are we on the SHQ all of a sudden? What the hell's going on here? Didn't we already do this rant once?
Say goodbye to the one viewer that stuck through that.
So we will keep you updated here on what's going on. As always, I am Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Jeff Goodman from Long Island, New York. Wear your mask.
Right on.